and welcome to Hoda's Career Info. I am your host, Hoda, and this is the channel for everyone seeking knowledge about career services. My guest today is career growth coach Cathy Ginsberg. Cathy's vision to help others in their journey towards growth, engagement, and inspiration at work led her to create her own company, People Focus Training Inc. I met Cathy a couple of years ago at Cannexus Conference, and I loved her presentation about what she referred to as the Overwhelm Dragon. Today, Cathy will tell us about her journey, her services, and how she manages the dragon. Welcome, Cathy Ginsberg, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Hoda. Thanks so much for having me.
I really am looking forward to our chat. And right away, I'm going to tell you, we have talked about the purpose of Hoda's Career Info is to answer the question, what does a career professional really do? And embedded within that, of course, are the definitions of some key terms that we use as career professionals, such as career literacy and career coaching. So I'm going to put you on the spot right away and ask you for your definition of career coaching, or a career coach if you prefer.
Yes, okay, great. So to me, it's a two-way street, first and foremost. There's the client and then there's the coach. And really what we're trying to do as a coach is move the client or help the client move from point A to point B. So it's a combination of the client bringing what they need and their own experiences, their own goals, their own aims in life and their desires and so on, what they want to do in their career. Plus, and then the coach, myself on the other hand, being there as a sounding board, but also being there with resources, information, and guidance to help that client. So it's moving from the client from point A to point B within the combination of the client's input and the coach's input.
I like that. And I like your focus on the sounding board because, yes, I mean, they can have access to different resources online, but they need the career coach as a sounding board. You and I have talked about how, as career professionals, we arrive to this field from different backgrounds. And so, can you tell us a little bit about your career path and how you got to the career field?
Yes, that's a really good question because I have quite a diverse background, actually. I've done a few different careers and different jobs in my time. So I started this business, my business, People Focus Training. I started this about 3 years ago, and it's kind of puts together my experience and my background into a package where I can help people. So I have worked in training and development really for quite a large part of my career. I worked for a consulting firm at one point where we were writing training materials. That's where I got interested in training and development. It was fascinating to me how you can put together training programs and design them in such a way that people are going to be really interested and learn from them. These are adult learners. And at some point, actually, I started my own business quite a few years ago in the accounting, bookkeeping, and consulting field, because I had done a lot of that type of work in the past. But what I found was that, okay, I could do the numbers, I could present reports, I could do that type of thing. But what I found I got the most enjoyment out of was helping my clients to understand how to make their businesses more profitable. And so it was the consulting and the training parts that I was doing in that business that were most interesting to me. So I kind of took that and I took a degree in adult education while I was working full time, because that was really what I found was my passion, helping other people, other adults learn. And another position I ended up in following that was I became a business coach for a nonprofit organization, helping people to start businesses. And from there, I moved into management in that nonprofit, working more with teams who were helping clients with their career development, with finding employment. And this is where I kind of developed a lot more of the career background as well from that position. And so I kind of put it all together into my business, where I have the education and training piece. I have online courses. I do online presentations and webinars and that type of thing, but also I do the one-on-one coaching, which I really enjoy. And it's all about helping people develop in their careers, because careers can be really, really interesting. Sometimes we end up at a little bit of a dead end in our career, but what I like to do is help people kind of get out of that and find their next step forward and keep on growing and advancing in their careers. So just as I've had a very diverse career, I like to work with people to show them that they do have options, and maybe the traditional step-by-step career path is not always the right option for them.
That is very interesting. Particularly like this morning, I was reading about how we will be working past our 60. And it's not just, for financial reasons, but also for having a purpose. We could be working into our 80s is what is coming forward for us. So it's important to accept that, I'm not going to be on one path, but really have that varied background and be okay with that as a learning experience, perhaps, or as discovering what we like to do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And actually, I mean, it's shown, the stats show that typically people do change jobs and careers multiple times over their working life. The average person doesn't go into one job or one career and stay in that career, the same career, for their entire working life. Most people do have quite a few switches. So it's a fairly normal thing now.
And I think this is built on why our job becomes important. So, for the purpose of our audience who are looking to understand more about what career professionals have to offer, and particularly for you, your title as a professional business coach, my next question is about the packages that you offer. Can you briefly just share some of these packages and how you can help, your clients move within that career path?
Yes, absolutely. And I do provide packages as opposed to coaching by the hour, because I do find for my clients that having a more lengthy relationship with a coach as opposed to just one or two sessions, working with a coach for several weeks or several months tends to be a lot more beneficial. And in with the packages, so there's the coaching time with me, but there are also various different tools that I offer, that I provide for my clients, depending on what stage they're at and what their needs are. So there could be career assessments, which will help to shed light on what their next step could be. There are different kind of checklists and tip sheets that I provide as well, depending again on what the client needs. And I also have some online training modules that I open up to clients depending again on their needs. And so I work mostly with typically with women in their 30s, early 40s, who are at that mid stage in their career. And oftentimes that's a stage where women kind of have a little bit of a struggle in their career because of where they're at. Often, maybe they're raising a family while working, and maybe the burden of, childcare and housework is greater on the women than on the men in the partnership. So sometimes it is a bit of a struggle for women to carry on and advance in their career. So that's the typical client that I work with, although I work with men as well in different age groups too, but that's most often who I'm working with. And they can really benefit from learning to look at themselves in a different way, look at the barriers that they've faced and how they've overcome them. And this is where the more lengthy kind of working with a coach can really help to kind of bring some transformation to get them to that next step.
That is perfect, because that was going to be my next question, is who your ideal client is. And thank you for clarifying that. So when you're working with that client, and so my next question is probably a two-part question. But again, I'm going to take you to helping me with discovering definitions. So what does Cathy define getting results as a professional business coach to our clients? Or how do you define, if you wish, a satisfied client?
Well, it depends what the client is looking for. So usually we start out with looking at goals. Where would you like to be? Where do you want to be 1 month from now or 6 months from now? Where do you see yourself a year from now or 5 years from now? And how can I help as a coach help you to get to that point? So defining success really means, okay, when the coaching engagement is drawing to a close, we can look back and say, okay, this is where you came in. This is what you were hoping to achieve through this relationship here. and where are you now? And if they have achieved their goals, then we can definitely see it's a successful, it's been a successful experience. Sometimes, especially if working with somebody who doesn't have a lot of clarity, they're not really very sure about their goals. And some people do come in at that stage where they're like, I know I'm not happy where I'm at in my career, but I'm not sure where I want to go. But getting clear may be a part of that. Like part of the achievement is actually becoming more clear about where they want to go, what they want to do. And they may have actually defined some goals during the coaching period with me. And then we can see, okay, at the end, okay, you started out where you weren't really sure what you wanted to do. Now you've got some clarity. You've got a big goal for next year, or you set some goals while we were working together and you achieved them. So we can look at each individual and depending on how they were when they came into the coaching relationship, and then how they are when they come out. And yes, sometimes it's that new job. And I've had clients where it's been like, they start working with me, they want to change, they want a new role, they want to move up the ladder, or they want to move out into a different company or a different type of work. And they've achieved that. And very often the support of having that career coach there with them just really helps to keep them moving on towards that goal. So that would definitely be a big win. But for some people, it might be, okay, I'm not sure I want to leave my job. I'm not really happy, but what can we do about it? It might turn out they've learned some skills in terms of communication style, in terms of managing their workload, so they're not feeling frustrated and overwhelmed, that type of thing. So they may learn that actually they're happy with their work. They just needed to change some of the things that they were doing so that their job was actually a better fit for them or in that particular career. So there's different things depending on the client. But in general, it's like feeling that they've accomplished something, that they've changed in some way, that there's been a change in their career or in their life, and that things are feeling much better for them.
I love how you highlighted is that it's not always a major change or a major pivot when they come to work with a career professional. It could be just clarifying some goals and needing some sort of empowerment to say, I can do this and keep moving forward. So thank you for differentiating the two, I guess, definitions of getting results. I appreciate that. Cathy, in the introduction, I mentioned that you and I met at Cannexus Conference a couple of years ago. And I really was impressed with your presentation that year, Taming the Overwhelm Dragon. I still think about it, and I was hoping if you wouldn't mind elaborating a little bit on it. And I don't know if any modifications you've done in the past couple of years, perhaps share that with the audience, because I thought it was interesting and fun to listen to.
Absolutely. Yes. And it was great meeting you there face to face, Hoda, back in the day. The face-to-face conference. That must have been 2020, I think, beginning of 2020, before the lockdowns that we met.
2019.
Oh, 2019. Perhaps it was 2019, because I have actually been fortunate to present at Cannexus for a few years now and on different topics. And this year, of course, it was virtual. 2021, we had the virtual conference, which you were at as well. And I was speaking about engaging teams in difficult times and engaging teams throughout transition and change. But yeah, so Taming the Overwhelm Dragon, I did present that at Cannexus. And I have tweaked it a little bit. I'm still presenting it to different groups. And as time goes on and different challenges come up for us in our lives, it's always good to kind of revisit those types of things. So basically, we live in very overwhelming times right now. And the last year has really shown that it's been a huge challenge. It was overwhelming before. There was a lot of people really feeling overly busy, finding it hard to juggle everything. And actually that quote, "We live in overwhelming times," it comes from a Harvard Business Review article that I'm kind of paraphrasing, which maybe we might put in the comments under this video, because it was really well worth reading. But it talks about making mental health your number one priority. But basically, when it comes to overwhelm, what happens is we tend to take on too much as professionals. Maybe our clients take on too much, or they're feeling overwhelmed. If they're looking for work, they're feeling overwhelmed by all the different things they need to do. So how do you overcome that feeling of being overwhelmed? And also, how do you know whether it is that you're overwhelmed, you've got too much to do, too much on your plate, or are you becoming burned out, or are you actually burning out? Which is, I always like to make that kind of distinction. Burnout is a different problem. Burnout is much more serious. It's a mental health issue that needs to be dealt with. So you need to get professional help if you are at that stage of burnout where you're feeling really numb and unable to really cope with life at all. Whereas as opposed to being overwhelmed when you're typically just very, very busy and you feel like, yeah, if I can just get this done, everything's going to be fine. I can keep on juggling. So there's some energy there. Whereas burnout is typically very little energy and even a very numbing of emotions. So I like to be really clear on that. But overwhelm, we can help ourselves not be so overwhelmed when we're clear on our priorities and we set priorities and we kind of keep to those. So for myself, I like to set priorities every week. I kind of think through, okay, what did I accomplish last week? What do I want to accomplish this week? These are my priorities, and I've got it organized so that at the end of the week, I can look back and go, okay, check on this, check on that one. 3 priorities is usually enough for any one person to be juggling on a weekly basis. So if you've got like a list of 10 priorities, I always say, try to narrow that down. What are the top 3 that you need to accomplish this week that would make you feel that you've accomplished something significant? Don't try to accomplish 10 top priorities, because that's definitely the road to being overwhelmed. So there's that one. Another one that I think is really important, and whether you're in the online environment or the face-to-face environment, is reducing the number of interruptions, because we are interrupted, especially in, an office job, whether you are working from home or whether you're in person. You'll be interrupted several times per hour, maybe as many as 50 or 60 times per day. And it can be people dropping in, physically dropping in if you are in that environment, or it can be from text messages. We've got notifications coming up on our desktops about, there's an email just come in, or somebody messaged you on social media. And I see this quite a lot. Like, people get overwhelmed. It's just like, I feel like they constantly have to respond in the moment to whatever message is coming in. So finding a way to reduce those unnecessary interruptions, and maybe it means you just answer your email once or twice a day. Maybe it means you turn off your desktop notifications. What I did when I was working in an office was and people were coming in and wanting me to sign things all the time. I was like, okay, if this is an emergency, I'll sign it right away. But if not, please leave it in the tray by the door of my office and I will do them all in a batch. So batching up work, and not having kind of walk-in interruptions or drop-in interruptions on your screen as well. And so reducing your interruptions is really important, I think, because it helps us to stay focused. And then the last one would be taking care of ourselves, because we get overwhelmed. We feel we're too busy sometimes to go out for a walk or to exercise or to make a healthy meal or to get enough sleep, or all of those things which enable us to stay healthy. So building in some sort of a routine for your exercise and well-being, finding balance in your life, and prioritizing self-care, whether it means, going for a massage, if you could do that, or if it's a beautiful day, making sure you get out for a walk instead of saying, oh, I should go for a walk, and then not doing it. So I know we live in kind of difficult times when it comes to self-care. We can't be planning, exotic vacations right now. And there's a lot of restrictions on getting together with friends, but finding ways of putting in self-care into your routine, not just saying, oh, I'll do that, when I get around to it, but making it, again, one of your priorities, that you'll take care of yourself. And when you're working from home, it's so easy for us to be on call 24/7 even, and that's just not right. So having a time when you kind of turn off your work and turn it back on at when your workday restarts, don't always be available, because that's not good self-care. So those are the 3 things. I'll just recap them again. So setting priorities, being clear on your weekly priorities, finding ways to reduce those constant notifications and interruptions that take your attention away from what you're focusing on. while obviously still wanting to be responsive to people. I'm not saying ignore everybody, but just have more of control over it. And then making sure that you prioritize and schedule in time for yourself, self-care. Those are really helpful in avoiding overwhelm.
These are great tips, Cathy. Thank you so much. I remember turning the notifications off after our presentation, where now I like work for an hour. I used to get these notes flashing at the top of the screens that I got email, and then turning the phone off. It definitely helps to say, okay, for this hour, I'm going to ignore everything else and just focus on what I'm doing. So that I remember that was my takeaway, and I've been doing it. You'll be happy to know for the past couple of years.
Definitely. I'm glad to hear that, Hoda. That's good to know. Yes.
So these are all the questions I had for you today, Cathy. Is there anything else you would like to share that you think would help us identify what a career coach really does, or anything else you'd like to add? Or I guess you hoped I'd ask, but I didn't.
Yes, I guess, I mean, there are different types of career coaches, aren't there? I mean, depending on what your needs are. I mean, as I say, for myself, the people I work with mostly are, usually they're working, or they've recently been working in a middle management type of position, or some kind of professional position, and they're looking to kind of advance in their career. But there are also coaches who will work with people who are, like, as I think you do, Hoda, like younger at an earlier stage in their career, or maybe just launching into a career. Others who specialize in older workers who are, like you mentioned, we're going to work probably well into our 60s, sometimes into our 70s and 80s. So maybe a coach who works with people at the more senior end of the age spectrum, and looking at options for that, or people who are looking to explore the gig economy, maybe start a business. So there are definitely different specialties. So it's finding somebody who has the like that focus that you need in your career at that moment in time, and finding also somebody that you have a rapport with, because when you're working with a coach, it is, like, as I mentioned earlier, a two-way relationship. So you want to kind of explore how well you are going to fit with this particular coach, and because it's going to be a working relationship, hopefully for some time, at least a few weeks and maybe a few months even. So those are the things I would look for.
That's perfect. Thank you so much, Cathy, for your time. I really enjoyed our conversation. And again, thank you also for your support in joining me today.
Yeah, well, thanks so much, Hoda. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you, and look forward to talking with you again sometime soon.
Thank you so much for joining me today in Hoda's Career Info. I hope you enjoyed this episode and enjoyed learning about Cathy Ginsberg's work. You can connect with Cathy via her website, peoplefocustraining.ca, or on LinkedIn, and she's also on Facebook. I am your host, Hoda, and until next time, keep moving forward.